I don't know about you guys, but things feel strangely quiet right now at this moment in time, almost like it's a calm before the storm. The only reason I mention that is because we know that March is very busy energetically. We have 4 Kizimis, we have eclipse season, we have the equinox, we have a whole bunch of different things occurring this March. I made a video on that. Some of you may have already seen that and know what we have coming up in store for the second half of the month when things get really quite wild. But right now, everything is quiet. There really hasn't been any notable solar activity. Right now, solar activity is at low levels. So are earthquakes. We had a magnitude 6.1 yesterday, but beyond that, things really have been quiet in terms of global seismicity for about 2-3 months now. So what gives? Is there something that's about to happen, and is this the calm before the storm? That's the question that we'll explore today. Let's jump right in. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, I'm your space weatherman Stefan Burns, and here on this channel we cover solar activity, space weather, what's happening on the Earth energetically, geologically, geophysically. We also look at the solar system, planetary resonances, cosmic forces, and more. If you like the sound of that, then please subscribe. Also, an announcement before we get started. I talked about this on my live stream, but the Explorer earthing boots are now available. And so I've been working on these earthing boots for more than 5 years now, because when I first got into earthing, I wanted a boot that did it all, and I couldn't find one as a consumer. Now I make them myself. I sell them to you guys. These are thoughtfully designed with biology and also with electromagnetism in mind. So they are completely conductive with a leather sole, 0 toe drop, wide toe box. So it's really good for your feet. And they also have that copper plug at the K1 meridian. So they are excellent for grounding yourself in your day-to-day, and you can go out hiking with them. You can go explore nature. They are the best earthing shoes in the world, unless there's some other earthing shoes I don't know about, but these are the best in the world. I travel with these. They are awesome. Also, herb coffee has been restocked, and it has a new formula now. I replaced the chaga mushroom with lion's mane mushroom, which has a whole bunch of nootropic properties, really good for neuroplasticity and learning, pairs excellent with coffee. And so this is now even better than it was before. If you like to get a little bit of a morning pick-me-up, but also get focused and creative and neuroplastic and everything, then herb coffee is the morning brew for you. And there's also spirituality still in stock. I've been keeping it in stock, and that's composed of blue lotus flower, chamomile mugwort, and passion flower. Excellent for helping you to enhance your rest, relaxation, sleep, enhance dreams. That is the most reported effect of spirituality. Excellent for these quiet moments in time that we have right now, which soon may change. If we look at our sun right here, our 193 angstrom view, we see the first agent of potential change rotating right now through the Earth geoeffective zone. This is a coronal hole. It's not super large, but we do see it there now having passed through Earth center direct. And it's really this zone right here where it goes geoeffective. This is an area on the sun where the magnetic field is weaker and the plasma temperature is lower. And because of this configuration, you have a whole bunch of high-speed ions streaming out of this coronal hole and enhances the solar wind. And in fact, the last coronal hole rotation that we had really jumped the solar wind up to like 700, 800 kilometers per second. And that gave us some low-grade geomagnetic activity for quite a while. That was a bigger coronal hole system, but we see the potential of these sort of high-speed stream impacts. And now it's going through the geoeffective position. And so this is the most active thing on the sun right now as it relates to us here on Earth, that we do have a sunspot group right there. It did give us an M-class flare a couple of days ago. Let's check it out. Here we have our sun in the 131 angstrom view, March 5th to the 7th. And there we see that one M-class flare that we've had over the past 3 days, a 1.7 M-class flare. Besides that, we've basically had nothing. Overall X-ray flux has been just hovering near baseline for solar maximum, which is elevated over solar minimum. But that is the most significant thing that we've had over this time frame, and really for a while now. So there are these active regions. This sunspot has grown quite a bit. It's slightly diminished now since that period of maximum growth. It is Earth center direct at this moment in time. We have another sunspot group over there, another one right there, but they just really haven't been doing much. The magnetic field, even though right now at solar maximum, it's most unstable and chaotic, it's also reached a period of quasi-stability, you could say, because you get a solar flare when you have a lot of magnetic field reconnections and turbulence. But right now, we're not really having that. And so this is just an indication that there is a calm period right now, and perhaps we're going to have more significant solar activity in the future. That's almost guaranteed. The question is, when is that going to occur? We know that we have solar maximum going through 2025 and also into 2026. And then we get a lot of solar activity typically on the descending phase of a solar cycle as well. So right now we're in this quasi-stable period, but I think that's likely to change just in the next week or two. We have a full moon coming up on the 14th, and then we have in general for the second half of March, a lot of activity. But before we get into that, let's look at our 304 angstrom view, because there were some plasma filaments that blasted off, but they will miss us. Here we have our sun in the 304 angstrom view, and this allows us to see some of these structures that hang out around the surface of the sun like plasma filaments. And so you'll see right at the beginning of the 7th, you'll see a plasma filament blast off right there. There it goes. You see a very quick canyon of fire. That looks like it's going to the south based on the coronagraph imagery. So while it did launch from Earth's center, it did not in fact line up and get aimed at us. And that's a very similar story to what happened with the last plasma filament, which had a space weather forecast to it of a G1 storm. And we did get close to a G1 storm from that, but it was definitely a pretty much a miss. We only got the slightest flank impact from that storm, whereas it hit the solar orbiter probe hanging out near Venus and really gave it a pretty significant shock. So it really is important, even if these things are Earth center direct, whether they're shooting south or north in reference to the ecliptic plane, which is where the Earth is. That is that plane that sits between the sun and the Earth, right? We just create that plane as our reference frame. And so we had that plasma filament blast off, and at the same time we also had a destabilization down here. But beyond that, you'll also see that things have been fairly quiet if we look at our 304 angstrom view. So in general, the sun has been quiet, and often what we see are these rhythms of activity. And so if you get a low, then you have a wave of peak activity coming later. You can't have a peak without a trough for a wave, or else it's not a wave. And so if we are at the trough part of a wave in solar activity, then we have some sort of peak coming up soon. The question is when. I think that's going to be later in March. Let's look at some more solar data. And just to get your eyes on it, here we have our 2800 megahertz solar radio flux, our calibrated far side map of the sun to see sunspots, and also our sunspot count on the Earth facing side for the past month. So we see that our solar radial flux is actually really low right now. It really hit a low there, about 140 back at the very beginning of March. But then we see that it did have a little bit of an increase, but now it's back down close to 140, about maybe 147 right there. This is late January. You see some of these high values that we had back then in the beginning of February above 200 for this solar radial flux. So we've been kind of really going down. This is the lowest that I've seen this in a while. And we see our sunspots are maintaining a bit of a better presence than the solar radial flux, but again, they're just not doing much. So we have sunspots right now over 100. The monthly average so far for March is about maybe 130 or so. But they just haven't been that active. And if we look at the far side of the sun using our helioseismic data, we see this sunspot right now that's Earth center direct that again has only given us that 1.7 M-class flare on the 5th of March. On the far side, nothing. Now sometimes with this helioseismic, the sunspots don't show up, and so it's useful to track this over time, like check in every single day, because sometimes they show up and then sometimes they kind of disappear, then they show up again. But right now, based on this map that was made today on the 7th, effectively nothing is showing up in our calibrated far side map. So the sunspots that rotated out of view a week, 2 weeks ago, which are kind of would be right here in this zone, maybe they've diminished and died out. Sunspots have a life cycle. So in general, across basically all counts, the sun has been very, very quiet. But again, based on just how a wave works, if things are really quiet now, perhaps things are going to be very active very soon. That may also be the case with earthquakes. Let's check it out. Here we have our global seismic activity for the past 3 months, and this is where we are right now. So this is the most recent data right there. This is the March 6th, March 7th. We see that our cumulative magnitude is 6.2. Yesterday we had a magnitude 6.1 earthquake in Chile. You'll notice that even all the other earthquakes that occurred globally only bumped that up to a magnitude 6.2 for the day. That's just due to how earthquakes work and their energy release. It scales not linearly. And then we see that things have been quiet for a while now, going all the way back to basically the beginning of February when we had this magnitude 7.6 off the Cayman Islands. That was a very strong earthquake, one of the strongest in a while. But other than that, we also see that before that, things were very quiet. And then we had what we would consider more normal conditions where we have days where it goes high and then some days where it goes very high. And there's just a little bit more variability and the cumulative energy that's being released by these earthquakes. But right now, it's just been basically continuously at these moderate low levels, especially right there, getting very close to like low levels, except for the 7.6, which kind of bucked the trend. And what's interesting about that magnitude 6.1 earthquake out of Chile is that it occurred just within 10 minutes of the first quarter moon going exact. That's our halfway point between the full moon, which is a complete total lunar eclipse. And Richard Cortaro made some very interesting observations of magnetic precursor anomalies with that first quarter moon, and also how that lined up exactly with that magnitude 6.1, which is the most significant earthquake that we've had in 30 days, tied with that magnitude 6.1 earthquake that occurred in Indonesia on February 25th. So we've had just in general a lot of magnitude 5s and 4s and of course below, but we haven't had significant magnitude 6 earthquakes like we typically do. Often they're kind of popping off here and there. It's not that infrequent, but for the past 30 days, we've had this magnitude 6.1 in Chile, we had the magnitude 6.1 in Indonesia, and then we had this magnitude 7.6, and that's it. That's all she wrote basically. So things are a little odd in terms of earthquakes, and we also see these rhythms in terms of global seismicity as well. And so if earthquake activity is low, then perhaps we're going to get some sort of upwelling of earthquake activity soon. That is a possibility. So yeah, things just seem a little off right now. I don't know exactly what it is. Solar activity is low, earthquake activity is low, and in many aspects that's a good thing. A lot of people are very energy sensitive to these things, and when there are, big swings in the geophysical energies on our planet in general with the sun and everything else, that can affect our system. It can create, inflammation, and just in general throw our equilibrium out of whack, stress our HBA axis and more. And so this is a nice break, but it does feel like, to me, a calm before the storm, because we know that we have some pretty significant stuff coming up in the second half of the month. It really starts with this total lunar eclipse on March 14th. And then following that, we have quite a lot. I would say this is a key date in time to be aware of. And this is March 23rd to the 25th. And we have some very critical planetary geometry during this time frame. We can just look at these planetary angles using a heliocentric chart, and we see that we have Earth, the Moon, Venus are conjunct together, and then Mercury sweeps through and activates them, and they are all in opposition to Saturn and Neptune, and Jupiter is squaring both of these different groups there. Meanwhile, we also have some harmonic configurations to this. We have Uranus and Pluto in a trine, and they are also trine to this grouping of inner planets there. And they're also then sextile to this grouping of outer planets there. So the only planet that's not really engaging much in this planetary geometry is Mars. That's the only one that's basically loosely participating. We see that it does have some angles there to Jupiter and Uranus, but besides that, it's not really doing much. But everything else is applying. And if you just read through the book Cosmic Patterns by J.H. Nelson, then you'll see how this heliocentric chart for March 23rd to the 25th, during that time frame, perfectly lines up with what he identified as key configurations for severe geomagnetic disturbances related to solar activity and more. So I'm not saying that we have something guaranteed to happen on March 23rd to 25th, but we had the equinox right before, and then we see this sort of critical and rare planetary geometry line up. And if I was J.H. Nelson, I would have already put out an alert for this, but I'm not J.H. Nelson. I'm just showing you that we have some pretty intense critical planetary geometry coming up from the 23rd to 21st, this could be the opposite of the calm before the storm. That could be the top of that wave that perhaps is coming. So that is something definitely to be aware of. And notably, we have both Venus and Mercury doing their retrogrades right now. That's why they're all grouped together here with the Earth, because they both pass through and cazimi the sun around the same time. So that's why there's so much happening. And then at the very end of the month, we have Neptune switch into Aries if we use Western tropical astrology. And that is a very big archetypal energy shift that's occurring. That's it for today's video. Thanks so much for watching. And again, I've been your host, Stefan Burns. If we look at what's coming up ahead, I'd say the most significant thing that we have on our horizon is this total lunar eclipse on the 14th of March, just about a week away now as I film this on March 7th. This will be viewable for everyone in the Americas. And so that's just going to be happening at nighttime when you have the full moon. And the moon will turn a blood red color because it passes into the shadow of the Earth, which only occurs during eclipse season. This will also be viewable for part of the Atlantic and then also the Pacific, Hawaii, New Zealand, places like that. So this is the most significant thing that we have coming up as of right now that is known and identified. Other than that, we have what I discussed with the critical planetary geometry and then all these other things like equinox, the cazimis, and the shift of different outer planets and more. So yeah, a lot coming up. Make sure you stay grounded and energized and balanced and harmonized. You can use the Explore Earthing boot to do that. Even if you're out hiking now, out on the town, whatever, these are the best earthing shoe in the world that I know of. And I've looked far and wide. So these are the best. And you get them actually for 5% off if you use the code March Madness, all one word. That's active till the end of the month. That also applies to all the other products on the store at wildfreeorganic.com. And for example, spirituality or the newly formulated herb coffee, which is even better now because it contains lion's mane mushroom, which is a match made in heaven. So doing everything I can to support you all. I hope you all appreciate it. Sending you lots of love and light. Hope you're all doing well, and I'll see you all in a future video.